The winning words at wingam.com. I guess you could say it pays to listen to the Rich Eisen Show and the Justin Kinner Show. Weekdays from noon to 5 p.m. Right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on a Thursday, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. The Justin Kinner Show also presented to you, of course, by Dayton Weight Loss Secret. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret program has successfully helped thousands of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. Schedule your free consultation today in person or virtually by calling 937-999-1480 or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. Again, happy Thursday. We welcome you in live here. A ton to get into. Of course, the Bengals going to be in action tonight, Thursday night football, as they welcome in the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you can make an argument that the Bengals, well, the season, although a lot of people are basically kind of counting them out at this point, the season's on the line tonight. You lose to Pittsburgh, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it at this point. But a win tonight keeps the Bengals' hopes alive of prolonging this season and just trying to buy time until Joe Burrow potentially comes back. That timeline, of course, putting him in position to return sometime in mid-December. Will the Bengals still be in playoff contention by then? That'll be the big question. But we'll talk more about that coming up around the corner. Let's talk a little college football. The Ohio State Buckeyes, 6-0, number one team in the country, of course, defending national champions. And now they continue on their season and to kick off the second half, of course, of the regular season on the road at Wisconsin. Wisconsin 2-4 on the year, 6-0 Ohio State. And the Buckeyes, against their former coach Luke Fickell, are 25.5 points favorites. And to talk about that, as well as all the other top Big Ten news in college football, the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels, joins us. Paul, happy Thursday. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Justin. How are you?
Oh, another day in paradise, as I always say, but excited to have you on and plenty to talk about today. Look, I want to talk about Wisconsin and the matchup in a moment. I want to talk about Ohio State's win over Illinois. But I think the biggest news that has really happened all week, of course, was the firing of James Franklin over at Penn State. How surprised were you that move was made so drastically quick in the middle of the season like this?
Very surprised. But when you think about it, you could see where the administrators were put in a position where they were going to have to make a thing, Justin. They must have felt that they needed to do something. But, it's crazy how that went so fast. The loss to Oregon was one that had everybody continuing to talk about how Coach Franklin and Penn State couldn't win big games. But then obviously that lingered over to a bad loss against a UCLA team that had just dismissed their head coach and had just appointed an offensive coordinator on Tuesday of that week, and then to lose at home to Northwestern. There must have been concern that the locker room would have been lost, things of that nature, but very surprised, and also, which is part of the reality now, given the fact that it's a very large payout that they've got to pay Coach Franklin.
Obviously, you make a move like that, you don't move on from a coach like James Franklin just to take a shot with somebody, right? It's like you have to make sure you get it right. And we've seen programs make some drastic changes in recent seasons, and for some it's worked out, others it hasn't. But where does Penn State go from here? I know that you're not an insider. You're not out there, talking to every single person behind the scenes. But, this is a big job. How big of a coach, how big of a name do you think that this type of job gets in this cycle?
Well, you would think a big name. Now, who's a big name? That's everybody maybe has a different definition. And here's the other thing in making a change in midseason like this, ideally it's probably so that a school like Penn State can get a head start on the coaching search. The name that's getting a lot of talk is Matt Rule, who played at Penn State. But again, we've seen what he's done at different stops as he got Nebraska to the point where he deserves to make that kind of move. Certainly there'll be a billion other names tossed out there, but this is a big job. And, does Penn State want to roll the dice on somebody who's had success like James Franklin had at a different school, maybe at a lower level? It's hard to say. Do they want to take a shot at somebody that's not been a head coach? Most likely not, you would guess. But it'll be interesting to see. But, that's, I think, where we are, Justin, is these schools feel like they have to get ahead of the hiring cycle. And that's why these moves get made in the middle of the season.
It's I look at Ohio State and I don't think Ryan Day's job I don't think he was ever on the hot seat internally at Ohio State. I think there was a lot of people starting to get real anxious and uncomfortable. Let's just be clear, especially with all the losses to Michigan and, the constant losses and big games up until, last December, of course. But it's crazy, though, just how if you're patient, I mean, look how quickly things change. The narrative of Ryan Day just completely, I mean, no one even views him as a guy that can't win big games anymore. But that was the narrative, not even a calendar year at this point. Penn State, though, feels like, hey, there's been enough to make this change. I'm just fascinated to see what direction they go in. Now, Ohio State, Penn State play in a few weeks. We thought that was going to be another huge marquee matchup for Ohio State. Every game's important, but it is wild how much of a big drastic change in the perception that matchup is going to have compared to what we thought coming into the season.
Well, and then add to the fact that their quarterback, Drew Aller, is done for the rest of the year with an injury that he suffered. So, and then there are those people who were not big fans of his, didn't think he was, a guy that could take them, to big victories, kind of like the whole thing that surrounded Coach Franklin. So, yeah, that has changed, although it is still Penn State. And, it's still, when you're a team that's in a situation like that, where you played yourself out of national championship contention, where do you find big victories and where do you find something to salvage this season? And, and potentially beating a number one and unranked team and doing it on the road would be a big thing for Coach Terry Smith and the rest of Penn State. But, they've got a big game this Saturday playing at Iowa and, just trying to find things with a quarterback now who's going to be, assume Runkenmeyer, the young man from here in Central Ohio, will be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. They've got a lot to get together, but yeah, it certainly has taken a different vantage point of where that game in a couple of weeks will be.
Paul, when I'd Skip, we golfed right before the season started, and I couldn't hit anything that day, but I somehow won tickets to the Ohio State Penn State game. I gave up multiple foursomes at the Columbus Country Club for this Ohio State Penn State top 5 matchup.
That's
I feel like I got duped here. I feel like we'll see what happens.
And it's funny you bring that up, Justin, because I just a few weeks ago, for a relative, got as a Christmas gift, bought a couple of Penn State tickets. So, yeah, I hear you.
They're gonna be like, "What did I do to you?" So there you go. No, let's obviously Ohio State. They're prepared for Wisconsin coming up this weekend, but they're 6-0, undefeated. Defending national champions, coming off of a top 25 win against Illinois this past weekend, 34-16. Illinois, we're so used to that being a team that we look at that we kind of look over a little bit, but they obviously gave Ohio State the little resistance, but Ohio State coming out on top, another double-digit win over a top 25 team.
Well, a big win on the road, big fact that they forced 3 turnovers and didn't commit any against an Illinois team who had been turning opponents over. So, and there actually, Justin, was a fourth play that was almost like a turnover when the punter took a low snap and took it on his knee and downed himself and gave Ohio State a short field. So, being able to go on the road against a team that had played well, and think about Illinois. We were talking about Penn State. Illinois had that embarrassing loss to Indiana, but then bounced back and, was able to follow it up with a couple of nice wins. It's an Illinois team that's good. Maybe they're not as good as what people thought, but they're still a good team. And they were able to create, as you said, some resistance for Ohio State, but, push came to shove. The Buckeyes were able to get done what they needed to. Illinois did get some good things going late in the game when they were running their tempo offense and all of that. But, going on the road against a top 25 opponent, being able to get a win. And we talked about it last week, too. That's a place that Ryan Day had never been to. He had never coached against Illinois as a head coach. So it was one of those, and especially when you consider now back-to-back road games, that's half of a big challenge that Ohio State's been able to mark the checkbox on.
Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes. Paul, you talked about back-to-back road games. They check off the box for Illinois. Now they're on the road at Wisconsin coming up on Saturday, 3:30 the kickoff, 2 o'clock pregame coverage begins right here on 1410 ESPN Radio with Paul Keels, of course. But now they turn their attention towards Luke Fickell in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's obviously had their struggles in recent years. Luke Fickell, with all the coaching changes already happening in the middle of the season, that's another name, unfortunately, that people are looking at saying, hey, that seat's pretty hot as well. But Ohio State looking to remain undefeated and take another win into their second bye week of the season before they do have that matchup with Penn State here in a few weeks. Ohio State, Wisconsin, your thoughts on that matchup?
Well, it has traditionally been one of the toughest places to go play. They have great, passionate fans, but the problem now, there's blood in the water up there with how much they've struggled. They ended a streak of more than 20 years in a row not going to a bowl game last year, and really have just, what really has hurt Luke Fickell in Wisconsin, his 3 years there, the projected starting quarterback each year has been injured, and still no indication whether their quarterback, Billy Edwards, who transferred from Maryland, would even be possible to play this weekend. The last two home games, the Fire Fickle chants have been ringing around the stadium there at Camp Randall Stadium. They just have not been able to play the kind of football that in the last 25 years or so we've been accustomed to seeing Wisconsin play. They kind of tried to get back to the Barry Alvarez style of running the ball, pounding the ball. Turnovers really got them in trouble Saturday night. They're playing with a third string quarterback right now, and he threw 2 picks. Hunter Simmons did early in that football game. But as you listen to Ryan Day, like most any other coach would tell you, you got to be prepared despite their struggles. They're going to come out, feel like their backs against the wall, all of the cliches, and try and salvage a season with their best performance of the year. And there are people, not only that the seats warm, there are people that feel like Luke Fickell right now is a walking cadaver. I was wondering when the news came about a coach being fired on Sunday that it was Luke Fickell and not James Franklin. They've got this game, another game, and then I think they have a bye. There's a lot of thought that if they're going to make a midseason coaching change, that it might happen then. It's unfortunate, especially for those of us that know Luke Fickell and are familiar with what he did at Ohio State as a player, as an assistant coach. He probably doesn't get enough credit for how he handled the 2011 season as head coach here at Ohio State. Was really hamstrung by a lot of things. But it's unfortunate the way that is rabbled. But if you're Ohio State, they've got to, as Ryan Day talks about, be concerned about themselves and go up there and take care of what they need to do to get ready for that second bye weekend.
Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes, joins us every week ahead of the Buckeyes matchup coming up that weekend. It's Wisconsin this week. Paul, on the way out, just a couple Big Ten matchups. Your thoughts? USC 5-1, number 20. They're ranked 20th in the country. They're on the road at Notre Dame. I think we're kind of all just sitting back. We're respecting the work that USC is doing right now, but trying to decide just kind of where they fall in the pecking order of playoff caliber teams at this point. They get a big win at Notre Dame on Saturday. That puts them in that conversation for one of the top teams in the country, right? How big of a game is this for USC?
Well, it's huge, and if they're able to win it, it pretty much knocks Notre Dame out of any thought of being an at-large team in the playoff field. But I think there's still a lot of questions, Justin, about USC. Where are they defensively? Even though they did a good job shutting down Michigan's running game last week, and it's my understanding Michigan may have had some injury concerns. But I'm not sure we know what USC is. Maeva, their quarterback, has played better as of late, but this will tell us a lot about them. And even though it's not a Big Ten game, it certainly is something that could go a long way to their candidacy of getting into the playoff field. And, in a road win that would give them some high value.
Washington at Michigan, a lot of people have, I love when people say, the AP poll, it doesn't matter. It's a stupid poll. No one cares about it. But man, I'm so angry that this team's not in it. Or I can't believe where this team is ranked. In the meaningless AP poll, Washington is not ranked right now, but they're 5-1. But they are on the road at Michigan this weekend, a noon kickoff. Michigan, a 5.5-point favorite in that one. Are you surprised Washington's not ranked? And how interesting will they become if they get a win at Michigan on Saturday?
I am a little surprised that they're not ranked, and I think they've started to play better the last couple of weeks, getting a crucial road win at Maryland, a game they had to come from behind to get. This is a team that we've seen. They have some offensive weapons when you consider Devon Williams at quarterback, their top receiver, their top running back. They've got some weapons on offense. Not sure how good they are defensively, but they've got some weapons there. This would be a huge win that probably would vault them in the top 25 if they're able to get that in it. But if Michigan has any hopes of trying to stay at a certain level, this is a game they really need to get.
All right, Indiana, they have a 3 in front of their name. They are undefeated as well. They went on the road. They won at Oregon. My expectations for them were, I just want to see them go to Oregon and just show that they can compete with Oregon. And man, they came away with the double-digit win on the road, and they have been the biggest talking point this week outside of Penn State firing James Franklin. Are you a believer now? How good is Indiana? That could be, if all things, go as we hope. Ohio State, Indiana might be our Big Ten championship matchup, knock on wood, here in December.
I think we have to be a believer. And, the crucial point of that, not only just that they went up there and they won at Oregon, and I was like you, Justin. I thought, well, I wouldn't be surprised for them to make it a competitive game. But I was surprised that they won. Yeah. Think about this. As that game ended, or in the later stages of it, Fernando Mendoza throws a pick six, all the momentum going Oregon's way, but then they answer. They come back, and they don't let that filter down and continue on into the rest of the game. There was one of the national radio people who said that is probably the biggest win by anybody in the country this year, going up there and winning. So we have to be believers now.
All right. Well, good stuff. Ohio State, Indiana, they don't play in the regular season, but if they do run into one another, it would potentially be that Big Ten championship game. Voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels, joins us every week ahead of the Buckeyes matchup that particular weekend. Ohio State, Wisconsin, 3:30 the kickoff, 2 o'clock pregame coverage begins, and you'll hear it all with our guest right now, Paul Keels. Paul, you the man. I appreciate you as always, and we'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Thank you. All right. Good stuff. Paul Keels, awesome enough to join us like he does every week. If you missed that interview, we'll have that again coming up for you later on in the show. And you could also check that out at our ESPN Dayton YouTube channel. All interviews and select segments and shows in its entirety are podcasted there. ESPN Dayton on YouTube. All right. Bengals, Steelers, Thursday night football tonight. College football, a lot more to get into there. MLB, baseball playoffs, the Reds, viewership up through the roof. Of course, more on the Hunter Green discussions behind the scenes as far as how realistic could it be to see him potentially moved. We'll get to all of that as we have plenty of time to get into this coming up today. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers, Dayton Weight Loss Secret, and more of the Justin Kinner Show next.
brought you by a company that really cares about you. Apply now at kth.net. Equal opportunity employer.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. The Justin Kinner Show also brought to you by the Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program has successfully helped thousands of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. Schedule your free consultation with Dr. Justin and his staff today. You can do it in person or virtually by calling 937-999-1480 or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. Shout out to Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes. Awesome enough to give us some time to kick off the show. If you missed it, we'll have it again for you coming up around the corner. We talked, of course, about, look, James Franklin losing his job. It's wild to me. I found this, the memories like of graphics and stuff that I've shared on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. It's crazy that a year ago at this time, where we were with Ryan Day, how we were ready to give up on Ryan Day. And it's just fascinating to me how quickly, people make, decisions. Like, we act like just because what you are now is what you're going to be moving forward. And can you imagine if Ohio State was as impatient as what Penn State was with James Franklin? Now, you could sit here and say, well, they actually you don't think that they were impatient at all. You may think that they were very patient. As far as that's concerned. But if you guys remember, a year ago around this time, Penn State or Ohio State was in a situation where Ryan Day had a losing bowl record. He was 2-4 in bowl games. He's now 6-4 in bowl games. He was 2-4 heading into the playoff and won 4 straight bowl games and won a national championship. But imagine if, obviously the 1-4 record against Michigan, that's a problem. He didn't fix that. But he was 1-3 against the SEC. Or I'm sorry, he was 0-3 against the SEC. But no, I'm sorry, my fault. 1-3 against the SEC. And then, of course, he beat 2 SEC teams in the playoff and then won an SEC game to kick off the season. He's now 4-3 against the SEC. Like, you see how quickly that turned? He was 1-3 against the SEC heading into the playoffs, right? He had a losing bowl record. And then all of a sudden he has a winning bowl record. He has a winning record against the SEC. He had multiple wins against top 10 teams. He wins a national championship. And they're undefeated. They're the number 1 team in the country. And it's all because Ohio State was patient and didn't listen to you or me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was, that I was, very, level-headed during that stretch. We all get impatient. Now we just wait and find out if Penn State made the right decision or not. Now we just wait and see if they made the right decision. Did they make the right decision? That is the question. Coming up in 3 minutes. By the way, keep it locked in here for 3 more minutes. In 3 minutes, I'm going to give you another winning word that you can enter at wingam.com. As we mentioned, all week long, we're giving out $2,000 a day. And we're doing this on this station and our sister stations. In fact, we just had a winner on our for those of you who are familiar with Hot 1029, Kev Nash, who him and I have worked together for years. That's the other station Kev works on. And that station had a $2,000 winner. So keep it, locked in here. We'll keep giving you these words that win. Every time you hear them, you head to the website, you'll enter them at the website, and you'll be entered for a chance to win $2,000. We're doing that for the rest of the week. It's Thursday. We're doing this today and tomorrow. I can't believe the week's already wrapping up. Wild stuff. But here in, let's see, now we're sitting at, 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, I will give you the next word that you can enter at wingam.com. But the James Franklin thing, I think that you can make decisions to fire coaches and you can maybe be looked at as wrong. I think right now, Penn State, I'm not going to judge Penn State's decision to fire James Franklin until I see who they replace him with. One of the names that's being thrown out is that Urban Meyer threw out for Penn State is Dan Mullen. He believes Dan Mullen would make a lot of sense at Penn State. Maybe he would. He's doing his thing at UNLV. Maybe he would. Maybe he would win games. But maybe Dan Mullen just picks up where James Franklin left off, and they continue to be a recruiting power horse. They continue to be the 3rd or 4th most dominant program in the Big Ten. I think Ohio State has that locked up. I think Oregon's right there. I think USC is a brand. I don't think that they're there yet, but I think that USC has the capability to be that. I think we expect, like, USC should be that. I don't think that they are. They should be that, but they're not. But yeah, I look at Ohio State as the most dominant program in the Big Ten, obviously. I would put Oregon right behind them. I'd put Oregon. I know it's only year 2, year 3 that they're in the Big Ten, but they're a consistent power. They were a consistent power in the Pac-12. They've been consistent in the Big Ten since getting here. I know they're coming off a loss against Indiana, but you're going to lose. Ohio State lost to Oregon last year. You're going to lose. But Oregon has come in. They've already had an undefeated season. They've already won a Big Ten championship. They did what they were supposed to. Oregon did right away, putting the Big Ten on notice. I'd put Ohio State, Oregon. Who would that third team? It would be between Michigan and Penn State. Michigan has a winning record this year. They're 4-2. They have a big one coming up this weekend with Washington. Washington's an interesting one. I wouldn't put them up there yet, but I mean, that's a solid program too. That was a good get. I think the most underrated get was Washington. I think the most overrated get for the Big Ten was USC. The most underrated get to me has been Washington. I think Washington could. I think they have what it takes to be the more consistent power in the Big Ten than USC. But USC is always going to be given the benefit of the doubt just because of the fact that they're USC. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Penn State, though, James Franklin. You look at them coming into this season. They were a playoff team last year. It would have been Ohio State, Oregon. I would have put Penn State / Michigan in that third tier. And Indiana, not there yet. I'm not there yet, but damn it, kudos to them. Kudos to them because they have earned the right to be talked about right now. Last year was it just a one-off? It's not just a one-off. This is year 2 with a different quarterback, with a whole new cast of guys. Kurt Cignetti, his coaching staff, I found out that this coaching staff, his guys, his coordinators, they've been with Cignetti since he was D2. That consistency, the way that they operate together. I think the Cignettis, I've talked a lot of Indiana football this week. I'm just obsessed with that story. I think that is the coolest story in college football. I think the fact that Vanderbilt is favored this week against LSU, it's the first time, and I've got the time span it was, first time in X amount of years that Vanderbilt has been favored over a ranked team. Like, we're seeing these non-traditional programs have outstanding runs right now. And I'm not saying that they have staying power, but they've stayed. Vanderbilt's been competitive for a few years now. Now, whatever competitive means to you might be different than mine, but the fact that they haven't been the laughingstock of the SEC for a few years, that's progress for them. Indiana hasn't just not been the laughingstock of the Big Ten for a few years. They've been a contender. They had one loss in the regular season last year. They're undefeated this year. They're the number 3 team in the country. They had a double-digit win, two top 10 wins. They've won by double digits over both their top 10 opponents this year, at least at the time that they faced them. I'm obsessed with the Indiana storyline. I am. I'm sorry. I'm not putting them at the top of the pecking order in the Big Ten by any means, but Penn State, who are they? What kind of program are they? I mean, I think Dan Mullen could come in if that is the guy that Urban Meyer pitched it on his podcast that he thinks Dan Mullen would be a great get for Penn State. I think Dan Mullen could come in, and I think Dan Mullen could get top 10 recruiting classes. I think Penn State could be consistently the 4th best team, 3rd best team in the Big Ten with Dan Mullen. But if you were going to settle for just constantly being second tier to Ohio State, if you're okay with just that, then you might as well have just kept James Franklin. You may as well have just kept James Franklin if that's the case. I don't think that you move on from James Franklin to go get a Dan Mullen. I don't think you move on from a James Franklin to go get a Matt Rule. I think you move on from a James Franklin because there might be something there with the Urban Meyer, with the Nick Saban. I'm not going to rule it out until I hear one of those two come out and say that they are absolutely not taking that job. I'm fascinated to see what route they go. I'm also interested in the Notre Dame route and going after Marcus Freeman. I'm very fascinated to see if that's the case. Is Penn State a better job than Notre Dame? I think the fact that Penn State's in the Big Ten, I think Penn State's a safer program than Notre Dame. If you are Marcus Freeman, you've already led Notre Dame to a national championship. The perception of Marcus Freeman before that was he was a guy that they continuously underachieved. All right. And I think that moving forward, Notre Dame is going to be looked at as a program that consistently underachieves as well, already with 2 losses. They have a big opportunity this weekend against USC, of course, for a top 25 win to keep their playoff chances alive. I think Penn State's a safer job. I think it's a safer spot to be in. The money, of course, a lot of money at Notre Dame, don't get me wrong, but it's secure money with the Big Ten, with the Penn State and the Big Ten. Notre Dame, there could get to a point where these conferences get so powerful where they just start to say, you know what? We're going conference-only schedules. Notre Dame's going to be in a little bit of a pinch at that point. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know. The college landscape is so unpredictable. I think Penn State's a safer job. Is it a better job? I don't know. But let's be clear. If you could go to Penn State and have endless resources and have endless, money coming in just like Notre Dame, you might as well go to the safer route. The scheduling won't be as difficult. It's done for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think Marcus Freeman would be an interesting get if Penn State can go that route. I love Marcus Freeman. I hate that he's at Notre Dame. And I'm not saying I would love him at Penn State, but I think that would be cool for Marcus Freeman if he did that. I also respect it if he stays at Notre Dame at the same time. I'm fascinated to see what happens. Urban Meyer. David Shaw says, okay, let's read this real quick, Shaw. David Shaw says, why would Marcus leave Notre Dame? Has an easier path to make the playoffs, already has the program humming. I don't see a reason why Marcus makes that move until the landscape changes with scheduling. No reason to leave. Just my thoughts. I'm not pounding the table, Shaw, to say that he should leave. I just don't think it would surprise me if he did. I think Penn State's a safer job than Notre Dame, Shaw. I don't know why. I just feel like, you're more secure in the Big Ten. Notre Dame's a great program, but there's so many unknowns in the college football landscape right now. I don't know. I just look at it as I think it's a safer job at Penn State for Marcus Freeman, as far as that's concerned. He's led them to a national championship. I don't think that Notre Dame team was by any means like if the college football playoff was done correctly last year with the seeding and the way it was laid out. I don't think Notre Dame gets to the national championship. If the playoff was laid out the way it's going to be this year, I don't think Notre Dame gets to the national championship. You saw the gap between them and Ohio State. The defense was solid, but we still see the gaps between Notre Dame and the elite teams in college football. Those gaps are always there, it seems. There's always something that carries Notre Dame, but there's always that deficiency that truly separates them and not separates them in the right way. I like Marcus Freeman at Penn State. I just don't think that's going to be, I don't think that happens. I'm just saying that's the move I would go. If I'm Penn State, I'd try to get Marcus Freeman. I like that move more than anything. David Shaw says, I think the OC with the Bills gets the Penn State job. There you go. Ron Howard says Matt Patricia. I think Matt Patricia is a defensive coordinator that's heading to the NFL after this year. We talked about Luke Fickell a little bit ago with Paul Keels. Everyone that we've had on the show in recent weeks has just basically said we know Luke Fickell's gone after this season. The next question is, will it happen in the middle of the season? I think that's something to keep an eye out for as far as that goes. If Matt Patricia, we see it. We see these Chip Kelly did 1 year with Ohio State. Boom, he's in the NFL. We saw it happen with Nick Saban at Alabama. You would get these one-off defensive, offensive coordinators, and boom, they would either get head coaching jobs elsewhere or head to the NFL. So it's just kind of one of those things. But, I'm very curious to see how all this pans out. Matt Patricia, I think he ends up in the NFL after this year. I think he ends up back there. I don't think he ends up as a head coach. I think he's back there in the NFL as a defensive coordinator. I think he'll get paid more, just like Chip Kelly got paid more. I could see I could honestly see that being the case as far as Luke Fickell being the next DC in Columbus if that ends up going that direction. Lamar Shelley says the next job Marcus takes is going to be the Ohio State. Possibly. I just don't think Ryan Day is going anywhere anytime soon. Maybe that's my Buckeye blinders on. I just don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. But either way. All right. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll step away for a few moments. The winning word, I need you to head to wingam.com right now. Enter the winning word HELP, HELP. Head to wingam.com and enter the word HELP wingam.com. Enter HELP for your chance to win $2,000. It pays to listen to the Justin Kinner Show and the Rich Eisen Show twice an hour. We're giving out words that win that you could enter at wingam.com. Go and check that out now. Enter HELP at wingam.com for your chance to win $2,000. It's the Justin Kinner Show. We'll be right back. And we are back. Our week 9. That's right. High school football week 9. Our gridiron game of the week. Keith Byers and myself, Justin Kinner. We will be at Fairmont tomorrow night as they welcome in Springfield. Fairmont and Springfield will go head to head. Fairmont is 3-5 on the season, but they're 3-2 in GWalk play. They're going to be welcoming in Springfield, who, guys, Springfield started the season 0-3, and it just they were losing competitive close games. It looked like it was going to be one of those, man, that it's going to be a season where they just learn from their mistakes and they'll build on this for next year. They started 0-3, and they're 5-3 right now. They've won 5 straight. All 5 of those coming in GWalk play, and they're looking to increase that winning streak to 6 tomorrow night at Fairmont. Fairmont 3-2 on the year, 3-5 overall right now. But again, cruising right now in GWalk play. This would be a huge one for Fairmont with the playoffs looming around the corner. How is it week 9 already? That's pretty crazy as far as that's concerned. But that's coming up tomorrow night. Fairmont welcoming in Springfield. That's our week 9 gridiron game of the week. College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byers and myself will be on the call for that coming up tomorrow evening. Wright State basketball, we are again about to kick off or tip off, if you will, another season of Wright State basketball right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Coming up on Monday night at 8 o'clock, it's the CareSource Classic, by the way. It's the CareSource Classic at UD Arena. Dayton and Penn State will be playing next week. You'll also get a chance to see Northern Kentucky and some local schools as well. But Wright State and Ohio will play one another in an exhibition game at UD Arena on Monday night. Okay, so it's kind of weird. Wright State playing at UD, but not playing UD, whatever. But it's for a good cause. It's the CareSource Classic, Monday night, 8 o'clock. Wright State and Ohio will tip off, and that's part of the CareSource Classic, an exhibition game for both. UD and Penn State will play in the same thing. They'll just play the next they'll be playing that week as well. So all of that coming up this weekend. So just keep that in mind. We have tickets for the CareSource Classic. We'll be giving those away coming up here shortly. I'll tell you how you can, if you have interest in those, we'll be able to get those out to as many winners as possible for this coming up weekend. We are Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball, yes, but also Ohio State football and basketball. But football will be in action coming up on Saturday as Ohio State hits the road to take on Wisconsin. That's a 3:30 kick. It's a 3:30 kick with 2 o'clock pregame coverage beginning right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. And, of course, on our sister station, Z93. How about Z93? That's been a lot of fun since we've brought that back here in the city. So it's been pretty neat nonetheless. But, all right. 937-518-1410. We'll get your calls. I have a couple of people on hold I want to get to in a moment. As far as our cash contest is concerned, it pays to listen to the Rich Eisen Show and the Justin Kinner Show twice an hour, giving out words that win. You enter them at wingam.com. We have 10 minutes left. You can head to wingam.com and enter the winning word help. Enter help at wingam.com for your chance to win $2,000. You have 10 more minutes to enter help at wingam.com. All right, so tonight, Thursday night football, I do want to turn my attention towards that more in depth coming up here at the top of the hour, but we'll go ahead and take a quick little dive into this. Steelers 4-1, Bengals 2-4. Pittsburgh, according to ESPN Bet, is a 5.5-point favorite. Right now, it appears as, unless I haven't seen anything official, but it seems like it's doubtful that Trey Hendrickson is going to play tonight. And the trade deadline is 3 weeks away. I forgot that they moved the trade deadline back, which I like. I like that, you extended the regular season. You should push the trade deadline back. I still think the trade deadline, honestly, should be pushed back even further. I think that the trade deadline should come, honestly, let's see, I'd say at the end of November. I would say that you should not have the trade deadline until the end of November, because I just feel like there's a lot of teams right now that just don't know who they are. You look at the standings, and, when you look at the playoff standings right now, Jacksonville's 4-2, Denver 4-2, Kansas City 3-3, Tennessee, the Texans and the Bengals are both 2-3 and 2-4 respectively. I bring this up because a lot of these teams don't know who they are. Mathematically, the Bengals are just 2 games out of a playoff spot. And they're in a position where they got to decide, if they win tonight, they're 3-4, but they still don't know if they're going anywhere. So they have to decide, man, do we trade Trey Hendrickson? But what if we catch fire and win a bunch of games? Then we're going to look foolish for moving on from Trey Hendrickson. Like, do we not move him? I hate that the trade deadline is at this point. If you wait and you push that trade deadline back to the end of November, I think that's a much safer time to do it. A lot of teams, like you could say, you know who the Bengals are right now. You could say a lot of things, but the bottom line is because there's so many teams that have similar records, there's still more time. You know what I mean? Like there hasn't been a separation between the playoff teams and the Bengals at this point. The Bengals are still very much in this thing mathematically, but they win tonight. They're 3-4, a game under 500, and they're right there. But even right there, even a win tonight, I think a win tonight confuses the Bengals more. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to win tonight, but I do think that the front office, I'm not saying that they're hoping for a loss. I feel like the Cincinnati Bengals front office, though, is saying if we lose tonight, all right, this season was kind of shot the second Joe Burrow got hurt anyways. We're now 3 games under 500. We haven't won a game since losing Joe Burrow. Let's go ahead and move on from Trey. Logan Wilson, we're not even starting anymore, which is kind of a wild move. Let's go ahead and trade him. So you know what I mean? It's just kind of one of those, like, I think as dumb as this sounds, and I'm not trolling or anything, a loss tonight makes the front office's job easy. A win tonight makes things a little dicey. It just makes them, it clouds their judgment a little bit. Should we trade Trey Hendrickson? I don't know. We just won. We're still in this, but are you? You are. But if you lose tonight, you know you're out of it. It makes it easy. Buy Logan Wilson, buy Trey Hendrickson, acquire some additional draft picks. You could at least maybe get a second for Trey Hendrickson. I saw today that ESPN put out a list of checking in on it was a list of the trade possibilities coming up as the trade deadline's just 3 weeks away. And one of the trades that was suggested in there was the Bengals trading Trey Hendrickson to the Detroit Lions in exchange for a second-round pick. This came out a little bit ago. ESPN's Ben Baby, about a half hour before the show. Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson is expected to be out Thursday night against the Steelers, a source tells ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Now, he's listed as questionable as right now for tonight's game due to his hip injury. The source told Fowler that Hendrickson is hopeful to return for the Bengals' Week 8 game against the New York Jets, which that's what makes tonight's game against Pittsburgh so important, is because that Jets game is more than winnable. You could win, like you could beat the Jets. And if you beat the Steelers tonight, you're 3-4. You beat the Jets, you're back to 500. Now you're cooking. So I say all of this to say tonight is such a massive game. And I can't tell if, because of the trade deadline being where it's at, it needs to be moved back. I think that this hip injury may not be as big a deal as what they're making it out to be. I think that the Bengals are being extra cautious, saying, hey, doctors probably would clear you to play, but we don't really want you to play because we want to trade you. And if you're even slightly banged up, we don't really want to risk you going out there and getting extremely beat up and then us not being able to trade you. And if I'm Trey Hendrickson, same thing. I don't know if I want to go risk it on it for a 2-4 team. We may not be going anywhere. I don't want to risk it. I want to be traded. And if I could go to the Lions, who are a legit Super Bowl contender, I want to be healthy and I want to go there. I don't know what to make of this Trey Hendrickson injury tonight. What do you guys think? 937-518-1410. Are you buying into the severity of this injury, or is this both parties being cautious because they don't really know? And the trade deadline is so stupid where it's at. I just don't get it. There's so much season left to be played. I've argued the same thing about the Major League Baseball's trade deadline. The fact that it happens at the end of July when you have all of August and September to go. That's a lot. You have half of July, all of August, all of September, 2.5 months of a season. That's crazy long. I feel like baseball's trade deadline should be the end of August, and then every team heading into the final month, you make your final trades, and it's a sprint to the finish line. 2.5 months of baseball after the trade deadline. Some teams don't know, like the Reds, they didn't know who they were at the deadline. Like we think we got a chance. I guess we got to make a move because I think we have a chance, but I also think we don't have a chance. I don't really know. 2.5 months is a long time. The Reds, I don't think they make the moves that they did at the end of August that they made in the middle of July. Now, it worked out for them. That's besides the point. As far as I'm concerned, though, move that trade deadline back, and I think the Bengals would be less conflicted about what to do tonight. I don't know the severity of Trey Hendrickson's injury. I feel like it's both sides being cautious as far as that's concerned. I truly believe Trey Hendrickson wants to get the hell out of Cincinnati. He technically has been begging to get out of Cincinnati for 2 years. By the way, he likes playing in Cincinnati. It's not like he hates Cincinnati. He just feels disrespected by the front office. But hey, you know what? It's not working. This team's not going anywhere fast right now, as far as that's concerned, and he wants out. Potentially. Maybe that's what this is all about. We'll see what ultimately happens. The Bengals and the Steelers, Thursday Night Football coming up here tonight. A lot on the line. What up, Charles? Charles says, Houday, Flacco is going to ball out in Cincy tonight. Listen, I didn't follow through on my promise. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. For one, I just didn't feel like buying a Bengals shirt. I'm going to a battle of bad this weekend. I'm going to Cleveland. I'm going to watch a 1-win Browns team welcome in a 1-win Dolphins team on Sunday. I'm really excited for it. Okay. I can't wait. The weather is going to be horrendous. All right. I just couldn't stomach on a week that I'm going to watch my team to put on a Bengals jersey, but I'm cheering for the Bengals tonight. I'm the biggest Bengals fan in the world tonight. I want Joe Flacco and the Bengals to beat Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. I thought Mike Tomlin's little crybaby outburst earlier in the week at Cleveland was uncalled for. Cleveland, they deserve all the criticism in the world for a lot of reasons. That wasn't one of them. I thought Mike Tomlin sounded goofy. I thought he sounded, kind of silly for even bringing that up. It doesn't impact him at all. And maybe if it does, then it's him kind of letting everybody know that he's afraid of Joe Flacco and the Bengals. And that's why I'm pulling for Joe Flacco and the Bengals tonight. We'll see what happens. But yeah, Charles, I'll give you a Houday. I think Flacco does ball out tonight, and I think Cincinnati pulls off the win and pulls off the upset. So, all right, good stuff. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 coming up. We'll have more Bengals talk coming up around the corner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers and presented by the Dayton Weight Loss Secret. Hour number 2 coming up next.
active military. Save an additional $500 off your purchase. Visit at 8741 North Kimmel Road in Clayton or online at mybathcreations.com and get a new bath today.
Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, and we are back. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. The Justin Kinner Show also wants to thank our other sponsor, of course, the Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program has successfully helped thousands of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. By the way, I am one of those thousands of people that the Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program has successfully helped. I started with Dayton Weight Loss back in early July, first week of July. And from there on, I lost 30 pounds in the first 2 months, like this says right here. So I'm down at 180. I started at 210. I'm sitting at 180 right now, which has been phenomenal. I mean, I haven't weighed, what I weigh right now since, early goings of college and high school. So I'm telling you right now, there's no injections. All right. There's no medications. There's no injections. There's no, prepackaged meals, no endless exercising, none of that stuff. So again, if you want to give them a call to find out, to get for a free consultation, give them a call today, please. 937-999-1480. You can schedule your free consultation with the Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program today, 937-999-1480, or you can schedule your free consultation online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. All right. We welcome you back. Hour number 2. Paul Keels, how about that? The voice of the Buckeyes. I had a good time chatting and hanging out with him in the last hour. If you missed our conversation, we talked about the firing of James Franklin and the direction that Penn State goes from here. And Kurt Cignetti in Indiana, they're for real. Paul Keels says we don't have a choice. We have to be a believer in Indiana. We talked about that, as well as Luke Fickell's future in Wisconsin. Will he last the season? Could this be one of those, could Ohio State ending? I mean, I think the timing of this Ohio State game for Luke Fickell is unfortunate, because I think if it's ugly, Wisconsin is a 25.5 point dog. Wisconsin used to be a team when I was growing up, and I shouldn't say growing up, but at least when I was in my, 20s into my 30s, there's a good stretch where Wisconsin, you circled that game on the schedule every year. Now when the schedule comes out, you look for Penn State, you circle that. You obviously circle Michigan, right? We're at the point now where you look for Oregon. If they're on, you're going to circle that. There's, Washington. I think I'm going to start adding them to that list. I think Washington's a hell of a program. I'm going to start circling that one. Wisconsin used to be that team. Wisconsin's no longer that team. I mean, a 25.5 point line. It's wild how drastically things have changed in college football, where you have Illinois as a 15.5 point dog. You know what I mean? We expected a dogfight with Illinois. Last year against Indiana, we didn't truly believe them, but it was like a 15-point line. I thought that was ridiculous. I thought Ohio State was going to blow them out of the water. They blew them out. It was a little close and ugly in the first half. But we're seeing non-traditional schools build themselves up to be more of a pain in the ass to Ohio State than the teams that we're accustomed to see be problems for Ohio State. I mean, heck, there was a stretch where Michigan State was a team that I would circle growing up. They're no longer a threat in the Big Ten. Wisconsin's no longer a threat in the Big Ten. I mean, we're literally at the point where I have more respect for Illinois and Indiana as football institutions than I do Wisconsin and Michigan State and others who were for the longest time, contenders in the Big Ten. No longer the case. That's no longer the case, at least as of right now. We know how quickly things could turn around in college football. 2 years ago, I never would have thought we would see a number in the top 10 in front of Indiana's name, and they're the number 3 team in the country. They're undefeated. They have 2 top 10 wins, and they've beat both of their top 10 opponents by double digits. They've beat the 2 top 20, the 2 top 10 wins that Indiana has. They've won by a combined 70 points. That's crazy when you really think about it. When you combine the win totals. All right, when you combine the wins that Penn State or that Indiana has had over, Oregon and Illinois, they won, and both of those were top 10 opponents. They won by a combined 70 points. That's just strange. It's unfortunate for the timing of this for Wisconsin, because I think that, it's going to be Ohio State that gets Luke Fickell fired. Wisconsin is 2-4. They're 25.5 point dogs. I think Ohio State. I think they more than cover this one. I mean, maybe not. 25.5, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's the line that we saw for Ohio State early in the season when they played Ohio. Right? Like when they played Ohio, when they played a bad Minnesota team, it was a 22.5 point line. Like when Wisconsin is a 25.5 point at Wisconsin, what would this line be if this was in Columbus? I think that Luke Fickell is hanging on by a thread at this point in Madison. And I just think it's going to be one of those things where if Ohio State covers and they blow the doors off, I could see this getting really ugly. I could see potentially Luke Fickell not only being fired at the end of the season, potentially being let go right here in the middle. Because here's the stretch that's coming up. Wisconsin's done for. My goodness. Guys, have you seen this? Oh, my God. I didn't even realize this. Okay. Here's what's ahead for Wisconsin. Luke Fickell's not going to see the end of the season. There's just no way. Guys, they play Ohio State Saturday. 7 days later, they are at Oregon. Then on November 8th, they are at home against Washington. Then they are at top 3 Indiana. They play top 10 teams in 3 of the next 4 weeks, and Washington is a top 25 team. I don't give a damn. They don't have a number in front of their name. Washington's a good football team. Illinois has been top 25 all season, and they gave Ohio State a good push, right? Like they're playing number 1 Ohio State, number 8 Oregon. Washington should be in the top 25. They're 5-1. Indiana is number 3 in the country. So they're playing Ohio State at home, at Oregon, at home against Washington, at Indiana. Then they have Illinois at home in the second to last week of the season. And then they could finally take a breath with Minnesota to close it out. And they may not win that game. That's brutal. Luke Fickell, man, you should have stayed at Cincy. You should have stayed with the Bearcats. And the likelihood, I kept predicting that Luke Fickell was going to get canned at the end of the season. And I also thought that Cincinnati was going to move on from their head coach after this season as well. But you got to give UC credit because UC is kind of doing their thing right now. And they're sitting in the top 25 as we currently sit right now. You know, I mean, you got to give Cincinnati credit. They're doing what they're supposed to, and they're in the top 25, and they're one of the top teams in the Big 12. I don't know what that means for the Big 12, but, you know, it's just kind of one of those things where the Cincinnati Bearcats are doing their job as we currently sit here right now, and you got to give a lot of credit to their head coach at this point for doing what he's supposed to. So I'm fascinated by that little dilemma there because Satterfield I thought was going to be canned at the end of the year. I thought we were going to see the end of Luke Fickell in Wisconsin, and then I thought we were going to see what we saw. Scott Frost got fired from when he went, of course, to Nebraska. He gets canned, and he goes back to UCF, and he's having success at UCF. And I thought Luke Fickell would get canned at Wisconsin. I thought he'd go back to the Bearcats, but Satterfield, he has the Bearcats in the top 25. What else, what more can you ask for? Cincinnati lost week 1, 20-17 against Nebraska. But since then, I mean, you look at after they lost to Nebraska, they blew out their non-conference opponents by a total of 104-20. And they've, won every game since. They just won their rivalry game against UCF and Scott Frost this past weekend. Now we'll find out a little bit. They're going to be at Oklahoma State, who, this Oklahoma State's in shambles right now. They could beat Baylor. Utah is going to be a good matchup for them. But Arizona, BYU, TCU, man, look out for Cincinnati. What if we see 2 teams from the state of Ohio make the playoff this year? I didn't think Satterfield, I didn't think this UC could do this, but to their credit, they're winning the games that they're supposed to. No doubt about it. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. We'll be right back right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio. Actually, before we go, let me give you guys this. Head to wingam.com. We have another chance for you to win $2,000. You have 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes to get to wingam.com to enter the winning word power. Enter power at wingam.com. Again, it's 4:15 right now. You have 15 minutes to get to wingam.com and enter the winning word power for your chance to win $2,000. We'll step away for a few moments. During the commercial break, please head to wingam.com. Enter the winning word power for your chance to win $2,000. Best of luck. Hopefully we contact you as one of our lucky winners. We've already had a few winners here in the Dayton market. We're hoping to add you to that list as well. So enter power at wingam.com. We'll be right back.
Flash sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Then watch JTV on TV or shop JTV.com for big holiday deals.
All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, 937-518-1410. So we'll get into our conversation with Paul Keels more coming up in just a moment. We talked about Kirk Cignetti at Indiana. We talked about Penn State and the potential candidates that you could see take James Franklin's job that's now vacant over with the Nittany Lions. Kirk Cignetti, though, while James Franklin's being talked about for all the wrong reasons, Kirk Cignetti is getting talked about for all the right reasons. And I thought this was pretty cool because everyone's talking about, Penn State going and plucking some coaches. I expect some announcements of coaching salaries kind of going up. I expect some extensions for some coaches coming up. And the thing is, this happened. This is how, Florida State got into the mess that they did with Norvell because the Alabama job opened up, right? There's a lot of coaches that got nice extensions. And it's because when the Alabama job opened up, everyone got really defensive and started locking down their coaches for long term. And I believe, was it the Alabama or the USC job? I think it was the USC job. They got Penn State in this mess to begin with. When it came to this long-term contract and all the guarantees and the expensive buyouts and all this stuff. So look, we know the highest paid coaches in college football. Kirby Smart making $13 million a year. All right, Ryan Day making just south of $13 million a year. He's at like $12.5 million out of the Big Ten. Lincoln Riley's just at 11.5. Dabo Swinney 11.5. Steve Sarkisian at Texas is 10.8. Dan Lanning at Oregon, 10.4. Kalen DeBoer, who goes to Alabama, gets 10.25 right off the rip. LSU's paying Brian Kelly 10.2 mil. Bill Belichick at North Carolina is getting paid 10 mil a year. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss getting 9. Those are your top 10 coaches as far as that's concerned. Now, Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, Dan Lanning, the only 3 Big Ten coaches in this list, at least as of now, because that's about to change, right? James Franklin was making 8.5 mil. So with this Penn State job opening up, there's a lot of talk about who could be the next Penn State coach. One name that was thrown out was, could they go within the conference and pluck Dan Lanning? Could they go get Marcus Freeman out of the conference from, Notre Dame? What about Kirk Cignetti? Indiana? Well, in the words of Lee Corso, they said, not so fast, my friend. Breaking news. This just came out moments ago that Indiana and Kirk Cignetti have agreed to a new 8-year, $11.6 million contract through November 30th of 2033. So with Kirk Cignetti right now making the money he is, so at 11.6 mil, all right, he is the 3rd highest paid coach in the country. You have Kirby Smart, you have Ryan Day, and now you could put Kirk Cignetti as we sit here right now. As of October 8th, 2025, the highest paid coaches in college football, it was Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, Dabo Swinney, Steve Sarkisian, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Dan Lanning, Kalen DeBoer, Brian Kelly, Bill Belichick, and Lane Kiffin in 6 through 10. What's crazy is, and I'm going through this. So Deion Sanders is getting just south of 9 mil a year. He's doing fine. James Franklin was getting 8.5 mil. I'm looking. I just saw Luke Fickell, so I said I'm looking. Sorry, but Luke Fickell's making 7.8 mil over at Wisconsin. But Marcus Freeman, it's crazy. He leads Notre Dame to a national championship. Guys, Marcus Freeman's making 7.5 mil. Everyone out there that's saying it's crazy that there's no chance that he'll leave Notre Dame to go to Penn State. Listen, okay, he is going to get a pay raise at Notre Dame. But is Penn State willing to pay more? The fact that Kirk Cignetti, who last year made the playoff, okay, and got blown out by Notre Dame, got blown out by Ohio State, and he's already making more than one of those coaches that blew him out, including one of those coaches that led his team to the national championship game last year. Good for Indiana. Indiana is showing that while everyone looks at Indiana and you think of, you think of them, you think of basketball, think of Bob Knight, that they're a basketball school. I think Indiana right now is trying to convince you that, hey, we love our basketball. All right. In every other state, it's just basketball. We know all the football is starting to mean a lot to the all Hoosiers. We don't have to sit there and say, who's is that? Like, we know who Indiana is now football wise. And I think that they believe they know who they have in Kirk Cignetti. At his age, he's not looking to springboard. He very well easily could. By the way, a lot of the times these contracts are done. I'm fascinated by the buyout. I'm hoping Indiana, did Indiana get desperate with Cignetti and desperately give him a significant buyout? I think that this is going to be one of those situations where the only way Indiana and Cignetti break up is he breaks up with them. I don't think they can afford to break up with him. I guarantee you the buyout on this is ridiculous. And unlike Penn State and some of these others, I don't know if Indiana's positioned to be able to afford those. But I don't think they're worried about a buyout. I think they're confident that they're trending in the right direction. But the fact that Kirk Cignetti comes in now at number 3, Kirby Smart gets $13.2 million, Ryan Day $12.5 million, and now Kirk Cignetti, the highest paid coach, or the third highest paid coach in college football at 11.6, just a point above Lincoln Riley at 11.5. He gets paid more than Dabo Swinney, who's won multiple national championships. So fascinating. He gets paid more than Dan Lanning, who led Oregon, who he just beat, by the way, who led Oregon to an undefeated, Big Ten championship last year. Interesting stuff. Let's go to Adam. Adam, we just lost Adam. Adam, call back. We'll get you back on here, buddy. Sorry about that. But nonetheless, I think it's fascinating. I don't think it's that crazy that, that Penn State can go hard after Marcus Freeman. Like I said, I had to scroll all the way down. I had to go all the way down to find Marcus Freeman on this list. He's going to have to get an extension at some point, and I think now we're going to start to see these extensions come out in the middle of the season. These are not going to be extensions that happen at the tail end of the season. Marcus Freeman, 25, now 26 coaches make more than he does as we sit here right now. I mean, Marcus Freeman and Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, Pat Narduzzi at Pittsburgh, Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, Sonny Dykes at TCU, they all make the same. Jonathan Smith hasn't done anything at Michigan State. Pat Narduzzi, he's doing a doozy of a job over there at Pittsburgh, right? Kirk Ferentz, I don't even think he knows what the word offense means. Sonny Dykes at TCU, great job there. But Marcus Freeman should not be in the same financial category as those guys, and that's just the case. Notre Dame, all this money. They don't have to split money with all these other teams. They're so rich, this, that, the other. Marcus Freeman just led you to a national championship game. He should be getting paid more than that. Adam, sorry, I know you tried to call, but thank you for messaging into the show. Adam says, Penn State might not be the most sought-after coaching job in the next month. What other job do you think could be that, Adam? Like, what's another job that you think would do, like, when it's all said and done, this coaching cycle, what job is going to be the most intriguing? I think it's Penn State as of right now. I don't think could USC be a job that opens up? Right now USC is a top 25 team. Right now USC's only one loss. They're coming off of a big win last week, and now they have Michigan this week. Adam Selzner says LSU if they fire Brian Kelly. And that would be an interesting stretch. LSU had won 3 national championships with 3 different coaches. They had 3 straight coaching changes where all coaches won. Ed Orgeron won a national championship. Obviously, we know Nick Saban won a national championship, right? We know West won that. Like they had 3 straight coaches that won a national championship at LSU. We know it could be done there. Nonetheless. So Brian says Florida. Is Florida a better job than Penn State? I'm not saying you're wrong. Gun to my head, I don't know what I would answer there. I think Florida, just because we've been brainwashed to say, well, it's the SEC job, it's better. Florida, it's better. Florida hasn't been relevant since Urban Meyer. And this isn't a shot at Urban Meyer because I love Urban, but like Utah has proven they can continue winning post Urban Meyer, right? And Ohio State has definitely proven they can continue winning post Urban Meyer. Like Urban doesn't leave and programs fall apart. Urban is a culture builder. He also is a culture destroyer at times. I get that. But Urban brings out the best in every program that he's at. But he also doesn't Every time he leaves a program, they're all fine. The only one that wasn't fine was Florida, which means Florida, how healthy of a program are they? How healthy of a program is Florida? I don't know. I kind of say Penn State's, all things being equal, I would take Penn State over Florida as far as being a better job. Penn State has consistently been a power in the Big Ten more than Florida has in the SEC. And it's constant coaching changes at Florida. Penn State bounced back from one of the most horrific and gross scandals in sports history. It had the strength, it had the foundation to bounce back from that and to rebuild. Florida is a mess. I don't think Florida's a good job. I don't think it's a great job. I think it's a good job. I don't think it's a great job. And Brian, I'm not like debating. I'm not even saying you're wrong. I'm just saying for me, I'm just not a big Florida Gators guy. Brian Hyatt said if they get the right coach, recruiting could be way better. Possibly, yeah. I mean, it should. That's the thing. Like, Florida's a disappointing program, and it just shows I think it's difficult to win there. People bring up some of the things about Penn State that would be difficult to win there. You could win there. James Franklin has won there. They built up enough of a roster to be considered national championship favorites this year. You know what I mean? Like, you could do that here. When was the last time Florida was viewed as a national championship contender? Adam responds with LSU fired Ed Orgeron within 3 years of winning the college football playoff national championship. Kelly hasn't even made the playoff. Oh, I'm not even advocating that they should fire him. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of crazy. Like, that's what's made Kelly, his performance at LSU so disappointing, is because, like, LSU is proven to be a healthy program. You know, they win no matter who's coaching there. That's a healthy program. They've been impressive. No matter who's there, they win. I think that's pretty cool. Ohio State's a healthy program. You know, whether it's Jim Tressel, whether it's Urban Meyer, whether it's Ryan Day, you know, from the 2000s to now, over the last 25 years, 3 coaches in Columbus, all 3 of them have won a national championship. I think Ohio State has the healthiest program in all of college football. Like, you need Ryan Day to do his job. You need Urban to do his job. You need Jim Tressel to do his job. But Ohio State is such a healthy program. I'm not saying the coach doesn't matter, because you have to get the coach right. But that program is so damn healthy that they are a contender no matter who's coaching. Nick Saban left Alabama. Like, we thought Alabama was the healthiest program in the country. No, they just had the best head coach in the country. Like, they were so Nick Saban dependent. I love Ryan Day. I love the job he's done. I just don't think I don't think Ohio State, and I don't think the city of Columbus is dependent on Ryan Day. I think as Buckeye fans, if Ryan Day, wins back-to-back and decides to go to the NFL, it's going to be a bummer. We're going to miss Ryan Day. You know, we're going to remember the downs, but we'll remember all the ups as well. But we're going to feel confident that Ohio State will remain a national championship contender moving forward. Alabama, everyone questioned whether they'd be able to keep it going. And although they're winning, they're not winning right now. They're not winning. They don't look like that Alabama team or whatever. LSU looked healthy, not so much anymore. We'll see if Kelly can turn it around over there in old Baton Rouge. 436 here in the Miami Valley. I have your last chance here to go and enter to win $2,000. It pays to listen to the Rich Eisen Show. It pays to listen to the Justin Kidder Show. All you have to do is head to wingam.com right now and enter the winning word prize. And you enter the winning word prize at wingam.com, and your prize could potentially be $2,000. Enter the winning word prize at wingam.com for your chance to win $2,000. All right, good stuff. If you missed our conversation with Paul Keels, we have that coming up for you next. But yes, breaking news that came out just about 15 minutes ago. Indiana and Curt Cignetti have agreed to an 8-year contract extension. Cignetti is now the third highest paid coach in college football, behind Kirby Smart at Georgia, a national championship winning head coach, and Ryan Day, a national championship winning head coach at Ohio State. He is the third highest coach behind those two. Nonetheless, Indiana's not messing around. They said, we've tasted winning, we've tasted success, and we don't want to give it up. And with this Penn State job opening up, it's one of those where they do not want to risk losing him to Penn State. Hey, before you even talk to Penn State, what do you need? What do you want? All right, cool. Here it is. Boom. Curt Cignetti's happy. They're the number 3 team in the country. They're undefeated. They have two top 10 wins on the season. They've beat both of their top 10 opponents by a combined 70 points. it's good to be an Indiana football fan right now. Good for Signetti. $11.6 million a year, 8-year contract extension through 2033. Good for Indiana. Good for Indiana. All right. Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio. We'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, we'll have our conversation with Paul Keels. Justin Kinner Show live here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We are brought to you by our friends over at Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. And the Justin Kinner Show is also presented by Dayton Weight Loss Secret. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret program has successfully helped thousands of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. I'm one of those thousands of people who lost 20 to 30 pounds in the first month or two. I lost 30, by the way. Schedule your free consultation in person or virtually by calling 937-999-1480 or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. Now's kind of a fun time to call and begin this weight loss journey with Dayton Weight Loss Secret, because heading into the winter, you do all you work on yourself during the winter months. You hide yourself in your hoodies and your heavy clothing, and then that way you get to the spring and you hit the spring and the summertime confidently. Start your weight loss journey today and start it with, of course, a free consultation by calling Dayton Weight Loss Secret right now, 937-999-1480 or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. All right. We'll be right back. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.